I thought I was going to be offered a promotion, and I was called in again by the big boss that gave me double my salary and offered me a lot more money for much less work, in my opinion. And he said, "Hey, you know what? We've noticed you've been number one on the sales board, and what we really want to know is how are you getting these sales, and are you sleeping with your clients?"
Welcome to Women and Work, the show where we take an inside look at how women are overcoming our own unique challenges as we grow our careers, businesses, or families, or all of the above, like my guest today. I'm Diane Moca, founder and CEO of the Mom Sub Childcare app, and I want you to know that work can fit your life. That's exactly what our guests have done. It may sound simple, but it's not easy. Today, I'm with a powerhouse, Delaine Blazek. She's an Amazon bestselling author. She's the editor of a magazine. She's a sales expert and sought-after speaker, and she's CEO of her own company, Solis Coaching and Consulting. Delaine, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to come here and share your story. And I want to know, first of all, as a woman, what do you think was the biggest challenge you faced when you decided 20 years ago to start your own business?
It was the challenge of the corporate switch. Do you work in parallel? Do you go off on your own? When is the right time? I am a really analytical person, despite popular belief that women are not very analytical. And I think that was always the challenge, is figuring out when's the right time. And the reality, the wisdom that I never knew before was that it's the right time when it's right for you.
Yes. And why was that even on your radar? Why did you say, I want to start a business? It just has to be the right time. Some people don't ever want to do that. It's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of instability. It's all kinds of things.
I like to say, I'm a recovering therapist, so we may have some control issues. So I think that was the one thing that I knew I could control because, okay, when you have a family, can you control that? Absolutely not. You can barely control your schedule and your time. If you work in corporate, can you really control your job or your employment or what's going to happen next in the company vision? Not so much. And I always thought, well, you know what, one day I'll be in the C-suite. One day I'll be able to make a difference. And one day I will not have a boss. And that one day came and I realized there was still a boss, and the boss was the board, and the board was worse than the other boss. So I think that was a big motivator of me, just to have more control over the direction and selection of the things that I wanted to do.
So, how did you know that the time was right for you?
It was a transitionary period in life and in work. So the company that I was at, I was the CCO of a Norwegian health tech company. They had came to a place where they were ready to be acquired and they were doing very well. My youngest was going off from high school into college, and I just remember thinking, if not now, when? If not now, when am I going to change and do things that I really want to do? And it occurred to me on a conference, and we had the most luxurious conferences working in technology. So I distinctly remember sitting in Napa Valley, having a glass of my favorite wine, looking over these beautiful grounds and thinking, it's okay. So if I'm saying that's just okay, then something is definitely not okay. So it was time to make a change.
So I was thinking as you're describing this that, oh my gosh, you were probably giving up so much, but you had gotten to the point where those things didn't matter as much as the next thing.
Yes, I think the biggest challenge that most entrepreneurs face is, oh, what am I going to do about the money? What am I going to do about the salary and the benefits and all of the other perks and incentives? But me, having worked in sales most all of that time period after I transitioned from being a therapist, I thought to myself, well, I'm not really worried about the money because I can make more money. That's my primary function, is revenue producing activities. So if I can make more money, then what's stopping me? It's just my mindset.
And you were ready and you jumped in.
Yes.
So let's go back to the time when you decided to become a therapist. Is that something that you were always drawn to? Did you figure that out in college? Did you just happen into it?
That's a great question. So, growing up in a small town in Northeast Georgia, we were raised primarily by my grandparents because my parents owned the country store. So, their hours were like 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. We got off the bus at my grandparents' house, and there was all these types of relationships. And at a young age, I remember thinking, I want to go to other people's houses and I want to see what their life is like. It was almost like putting on a new dress and saying, what does green look like? What does blue look like? A V-neck, scoop? I don't know. But it was fascinating to watch how others' families interacted. And when I got further in school, I realized that that is the core principle of psychology, is the study of human behavior. So it seemed like a natural fit.
And tell us about that career. That's a career that a lot of women go into. So was there a comfort in knowing, okay, this is a natural fit for me? Women are communicators, women are nurturers, all these things sort of fit together. And did you think this is going to be the career for the rest of my life?
I thought this is going to be the career for the rest of the life. I didn't know if I struck myself as a really great communicator, but I knew I was a good listener because I did not like to share things about myself. So it was a great place to be. People come in to see me, they have a problem. I don't have to talk about my feelings. Everything is beautiful. So it worked for a long time. And then I had kids of my own. And before COVID, when you went to therapy, it was traditionally nights and weekends. And when you had small little kids, you did not want to necessarily work on nights and weekends. That was quality time that you could spend with them. So that's when I knew something had to change.
So your career trajectory specifically changed because of children. And is children something you always wanted? Is it something that you got talked into or that just kind of happened or
Great question. So I did not think I was going to have 3 kids. That wasn't my idea. I wasn't one of those where like, oh, when I get older, I'm going to get married, I'm going to have kids, I'm going to have an MRS degree, and everything is going to be beautiful. I thought, well, you know what? The man is not the plan. I'm going to go to college, I'm going to get a job, and we'll see what happens. But along came these 3 children, and I like to say that they emerged into the world whether I liked it or not because they were products of the pill, the shot, and the patch.
really?
Yes,
And are you married?
I was. I am divorced now.
Okay. So you had a partner helping you raise your children. And so you decided that you wanted to be with them nights and weekends, not be away from them at your career. But did you decide, okay, but I still want to have a career? Or was there some consideration of maybe I'll take some time off? And did your husband at the time, his feelings come into this, or was this a sole decision by you?
Great question. We were a 2 income household. So that was the lifestyle we become accustomed to. And that was not anything that either of us, any of us wanted to change for that matter, kids included, right? They always want to get to their Chuck E. Cheese and have their new Nikes. So that was not really an option from a lifestyle perspective, but it was an option from a career perspective. But I didn't get into sales willingly or voluntarily. I just happened to know a friend of mine. It was more of an acquaintance at the time, and knew someone that owned a software company. He said, hey, you know what? Just go talk to them. They're looking for a couple sales guys. You're okay with people, so it might work out. And I'm like, I'm okay with people. I'm a therapist, but I am okay with people. So I go into the office. It's all gray walls, no clocks, a lot of posters about how to build your pipeline. And I'm thinking, am I in a sales organization or have I transferred over to some logistical engineer pipeline company? I had no idea. But I'm walking through it. I'm thinking, I'm not going to work here. I hate this environment. I'm not going to work here. There was a mini gong on the table whenever they got a meeting. They would bing the gong. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not a gong girl. I just don't think this is me. But we get to the end of the walkthrough tour. I knew they were probably going to offer me some sort of job. We get into the office, and then the big boss slides me a little piece of paper. He's like, this will be your starting salary. And if you're any good, you can earn double that in commissions. And so curiously and respectfully, I'm like, I got to look at the paper, right? So I pick up the paper and I look at it and I'm thinking to myself, this is double what I make as a therapist on the base. Double. And I'm sitting there in shock with my Freudian no affect face. And in my heart, I say, no way. And out of my mouth says, I accept. And that's how I got
Wow.
into sales.
And at a tech company.
Yes.
So, and you said they were looking for sales guys. I'm
Yes.
guessing kind of a bro culture.
Definitely bro. There were no other pink dresses to be found anywhere in the room, and this hair was definitely nowhere to be found. So it was interesting. I mean, even the board where they put the leaders was called Sales Guy Board. So that was interesting.
But they wanted you. So did you feel welcomed and like, I'm all in. This is my kind of place. Did you feel like you had to adjust? What did you feel like as a woman in this culture?
Largely invisible. They went about their day. They had their own trainings for sales, which I learned later were predominantly made by men for men to be delivered to men and had nothing to do with women. But that was all they had. That was all the tools that we had at the time, and we did the best we could with what we were offered. But I realized that wasn't for me. It wasn't my approach. A lot of the older, more traditional tactics just did not work with modern day buyers, but they didn't see it yet. This was pre COVID. So there was still a lot of momentum from previous deals and histories that they had had. But as far as net new business, that's where they struggled.
And when did so kids had come along at this point, which was why you made this shift.
Exactly.
So were you confronted with any typical working mom issues where, I have to leave, my kid's sick, I have to go home early to take my kid to dance or whatever? And did you get any, not the right kind of reaction that you wanted because none of the other men in the office had to deal with those things?
We had a pretty much shared responsibility with regards to when kids got sick or when
You and your husband?
Yes.
Okay.
So that was really helpful. We both had flexible type of schedules, and that's one benefit of being in sales. As long as you're hitting your numbers, nobody cares how much you work. So it was very much that mindset there, and it was great because then I could slink away, do my own sales process, make my deals, and then not be bothered. So it worked until I started being the leader on the sales board. That was when they started noticing me and thinking, oh, we've got another person here, and she's a woman, and how is she getting all these sales?
Were they threatened or were they curious?
I think that a little bit of both, actually.
And so did you share your secrets or did you say, no, it only works for me?
Only works for me, boys. I would have shared my secrets, but I thought I was going to be offered a promotion. And I was called in again by the big boss that gave me double my salary and offered me a lot more money for much less work, in my opinion. And he said, hey, you know what? We've noticed you've been number one on the sales board. And what we really want to know is how are you getting these sales and are you sleeping with your clients?
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Oh, what year was this?
It was early 2000s.
This is crazy that this still happens. I can't tell you how many women have come in and sat down with me for this podcast. And they said, yes, I knew I was passed over for a promotion because I was a woman, and I had someone else tell me the exact same thing that they asked her this question.
Yeah, you can imagine my surprise. I thought, you know what, maybe I'm going to get a little bit more on my base. Maybe I'm going to get the title changed from sales guys to sales people. But no, that didn't happen. But I look at it in retrospect as a supreme clarity moment. And that was my aha as to I'm not staying in this environment. So I said, thank you so much for sharing that feedback with me. I am not sleeping with my clients, and I would have been more than happy to share with you my process. But instead, I'm leaving, and this will be my last day.
That was it.
That was it.
As soon as you were confronted with that kind of an attitude, you were gone.
Immediately.
And what did the people around you think? What did your husband think?
He didn't really have much of a comment about the time. I think,
He wasn't worried, like all that money going away.
Always. But
What did the kids think? Do you have boys, girls?
I have all boys.
Okay.
And
so how did you share this with them so that they didn't grow up to become that man?
They were raised in a very different way. I'm from the South again, so we have different rules and different manners, if you will, and ways of being. So I was able to spend a lot of time with them when they were growing up. And I think that really made an impression on the way that they see the world and the equality of men and women in a marriage. So in the South, we typically, you see the man, you expect the man's going to make the decision makers, but we all know the reality is it's the woman. The woman is going to be deciding how things go. It just might be done in a more quiet way in the background or through some mutual discussion. So it's a little bit different in the culture. So I think that they absorbed a lot of that. I always joke with them and say, hey, remember, you're 50% Southern.
And so what came next for you? Was that when you decided to?
Oh, yeah, it was the same
your
day.
own
So I
business?
left, I packed up my things, I left, I went across the street. And at the time, we had no non-competes or anything like that. So I went to the competitor. I asked to speak with their leader and I said, how would you like to grow your pipeline and buy $8 million in the next 5 minutes? And they were like, what are you talking about? So I conveyed a little bit of the story and they said, we would love to have you. We're so sorry that happened to you. Please come take the corner office and work with us.
And were there other women? Was this also a technology company? Was it
It
mostly
was.
men?
There were no women again in the sales. There was women, but they were customer service, they were executive assistant, and they were in some other supportive roles.
Supportive roles.
Supportive roles.
And how did you interact, if you did interact with them? And did you feel any kind of responsibility to say to them, like, you can do this too, or others? Were you just like, hey, my job is to be here, do well for my family, and, enjoy what I'm doing and then go home? Or did you feel like, I need to pave the way for some other women? What was your attitude?
A little bit of both. I think, coming from a therapist background, we're taught to keep the session within the session and detach from it before you go home so that you don't empty your own cup. But there's also that sense of empowerment and if I can, you can, and just helping them uncover that they can through their mind. Of course, they can through their function, but no one can do anything until their mind is right with it. So that was the hardest part, was just building their confidence and letting them know that there is something greater that they can do. Because so many times I would run into women and they'd be like, no, you can do that. I can't do that. I'm too old. I'm too whatever. I couldn't. I'm not. And those are just results of wrong, negative, automatic thoughts that come from our core beliefs. So I felt like I was in more of an educator role in some ways, but I was younger than a lot of them at the time too. So that was another gender bender like shift in that. So they didn't really know where I fit in, but they knew I didn't fit in like they didn't.
When you hear that, then now we still hear that a lot from other women. I can't, that's not me. How do you confront that? What do you think is some of the cause of that we seem to hear that more from women than men? I mean, I know everyone, sometimes questions themselves and their abilities, but it just seems like women don't step into their own roles and own their skills the way men do. And is that something that you're working to change, and how do you do that?
Yes, I think challenging the traditional roles is important to all of us, no matter guys, girls, whatever. It doesn't really matter. All that matters is that you're able to find your purpose through harnessing your passions. And once you identify what your passions are, then your purpose is easy. I think oftentimes we've been told, you can be this, you can't be that. So we don't even open our minds to the thought that it could be bigger or more.
And so you ended up in technology because of a fluke, right?
Yes, total
So
fluke.
did it become a passion? I mean, did sales become something you became passionate about, or was it something that you grew to enjoy, you did well at, but there was something that you still needed in your life that you were searching for?
So, on my path of sales and technology, it was really all about the relationships and the different people that I met along the way. Whether it's customers or coworkers or other vendors, it was a very tight knit community, and we all bonded together through that. And like any good sales organization, the people that are listened to are the one who sell the most. So, my first goal was sell the most, be the best, be first. And I did that. And then I realized, you know what? I think I might be onto something with this process. I think that this might be able to be replicated. So then, as I advanced and got recruited out of roles, when I got into a position where I could actually hire my own teams, we implemented this program and they were wildly successful. So it was a wonderful opportunity to be able to test the process and see it's proven.
And when you were bringing on your own team, were you actively recruiting women? Did you have more of a balanced team than maybe had been there previously?
I was actively recruiting women, although that is definitely a no-no in HR. We have to look at all candidates equally, but it would have been nice to have a little bit more balance. And even though that was my primary goal, is to have balance, there were very few women at the time that were applying. So that was limiting as well.
And did you take steps yourself, or have you done anything now as the owner of your own business to, address that? Because you go into organizations yourself, right? And
I
talk to
do.
them about creating that balance. What can they do if it's the kind of position that they're not getting as many applicants that balance that out?
I think over the last 5 to 7 years, we've seen a lot more women come into technology in general, which is wonderful. And I know that for myself, when I was starting to find women, it was often promoting those from within that might have been in an inside sales role and thought that they could never go into the outside, and just training them up that way helped a lot. And in my current practice, I work, I like to say, exclusively with female entrepreneurs and exceptional men. But we do the coaching for either women who own their own business and would like to generate more revenue through a sales process, or corporate teams, as you had mentioned. And then they can have their own custom training.
So when you made the leap and started your company, did you already have clients that you figured, okay, I have relationships with this person, and I know that this will be okay? And how did that make it easier if you had that to make that switch?
Yes. So when I started out, I knew that I wanted to do the process, but I also knew that I wanted to recoup some capital along the way. So I just announced that I was leaving my organization, and a lot of our vendors had just asked me to start doing consulting from them. So it was a really easy transition.
And what would you say to women who are wanting to rise up in their careers, maybe wanting to start a business? They have children, they're trying to juggle it all. Maybe they don't have a role that's as flexible as yours, and they're always feeling overwhelmed. I'm sure you remember those years.
I do. I don't know that they ever really go away after you have kids, chronically tired. But I think it is just to have a strategic plan. Once you have a plan, then nothing feels as rushed. You may be able to implement the steps in a slower pace, but at least you know where you're going.
And have you gotten where you're going, or is it all about the journey, as they say?
All about the journey, lifelong learners for me. It's not what am I doing, it's what do I want to do next.
How old are your kids now?
So they are 24, 22, and 20.
Okay. And are they all out of the house?
They are 50-50. One is out of the house completely, and one just graduated from college, and the other one has 2 years left.
Okay.
So we're getting there.
Yeah. I have two at home, and they're out of college, but they bounced back. So that's what happens sometimes.
It does. I mean, just because they're out of college does not mean that they're out of your pocketbook.
And they'll never be out of your life, right?
No, absolutely not.
Well, thank you for all these little nuggets of wisdom that you've shared on this episode of Women and Work. If you are inspired by Delaine's story, remember to share it with a friend, leave a review, and subscribe to meet our next amazing guest. If you want to invest in a solution to the childcare crisis, you can reach out to me about the MomSub Equity Crowdfunding Campaign at diane@momsub.com, or connect with MomSub on LinkedIn or other social media platforms. Remember, your career, your choices, and your success are yours to define. Keep pushing boundaries and spreading your love and encouragement to other women who need it.